Yum, yum!
This video is going to cover how to make a trail in Modo that covers both a change in geometry on the trail as well as the ability to change texturing on the trail. So I saw this in a Cinema 4D tutorial or something similar to this, and I've been learning Cinema 4D. So I thought, Modo can do this, so I'll make a Modo tutorial. So in this particular one, I'm just using a tire and it's sort of pushing and indenting the geometry behind it, leaving a track and some sort of raised edges around the edge of the track, and then a dip in the middle of the track. And then, of course, there's a change in texturing as well, where it's a little bit muddy and watery in the middle. So, when you're doing 3D, whatever project you're doing, there's often a need for a trail of some sort. And so I think the techniques in this video will allow you to hopefully accomplish that. And so we'll just jump on over and get started with this. So what I did is I just went over to Sketchfab and grabbed a free tire. There's a whole bunch of them there. There's all kinds of great geometry on Sketchfab, and you can just download it and use it and play with it. Just remember to give an attribution. This is from 3D Checker Studio, and but like I said, there's a bunch of them on there. I just downloaded an FBX and brought that into Modo. Here's our tire, and we'll just look at the dimensions here. So you can go over here to display and add dimensions. We can get some dimensions on the tire, and you can see this one's about 3/4 of a meter in diameter, and we will use that later to rotate it correctly. And then I'm going to add a locator here, so just press L for locator, and I'll call this tire master. Now I did move the tire up a little bit, so again, let me just look at it from the side here, put it back to 0. You want to make sure that the pivot is in the center of your tire, because we are going to rotate it on that pivot. And then you can, after you can just move it up, make sure you're in item mode, and just put it right above the ground there. So it should be like, about half the diameter, which would be the radius. That's how high up you're going to move it. So it's sitting on the ground. Then drag and drop that on Tire Master so it's parented. I'm just going to quickly turn my Tire Master locator into something a little bit nicer looking. So I use Ateria's quick locators, fantastic little kit, free for Modo to quickly change the appearance of the locators. I'll just make this a square, make it, like sort of magenta, and then maybe like a 0.25 or something size. And so there it is right there. And that's our master. So if you move this around, it moves the tire around, right? Okay, so we've got our tire master. We need a ground. So I'm going to press in for another mesh item, and we'll call this ground. And I'm going to use a mesh op here instead of just making a primitive, because I want to be able to res it up later on if I want to by increasing the subdivisions. And I'm going to use a plane from Steve Hill's Primo kit. You can use a cube if you don't have Primo, and just have the cube be a 0 in the y-axis, and you'll have a plane. With Primo, though, if you don't have Primo, Primo is the best plugin ever made for Modo, and Steve is still selling it and supporting it, even though Foundry is not supporting Modo. Okay, let's make this about, 6 meters or something like that. And I'm going to make it a lot of segments, and so I'm just, channel hall right-clicking and dragging. We'll make it like 100 maybe for now, but we can always change that later, right? That's why we're using a procedural plane instead of just a polygon plane. Okay, so we've got our plane, and now we need a curve for the tire to roll around or follow. And so I'm going to press in, get another mesh item. We'll just call it curve. And then you can draw a curve if you want to. I'm actually going to use the helix from Primo and just just hold down Control and drag it out. Drag out the radius a little bit, and I can actually go to taper and drag in the center a little bit, and then just move the height back down to 0. And we've got a nice sort of spiral here, but I don't want that many turns, maybe like 2 turns like that. And then, let's just make it a little bit bigger. Then I'll just scooch it over just a little bit like so. Plenty big for the tire to go swinging around on. And then I'm just going to make this a little more visible by going to display, add draw options, and then just wireframe to user, draw style wireframe, and then pick a blue color maybe like this, and that should show up a little bit better. And now I'm going to attach my tire master to my curve. So just select the tire master, control select the curve, come over here to our rigging and constraints tab and click path, boom, and it just puts there right there at the start. Now remember that this was facing the Z, and the tire was just facing the Z, the thin part of it. When I say facing, this was facing Z, and so when you look at the path constraint, it defaults to Z, which is good. If yours was X, you can just change it and it'll make sure it'll align it correctly. But there it's aligned. And then yeah, you can see if I just channel haul the path percentage, then it's moving along the curve here. So why don't we just keyframe that a couple times? Let's do like maybe 300 frames for this. And yeah, let's on frame 0, we're going to path percentage at 0, and keyframe that, and at 300, we'll do 100%, enter, there we go, and you can just drag it along there. So now we've got it moving, but it's not rotating. So let's do the rotation really quickly. I don't think I need modeling tools, so I'll just pop that down there and bring up a schematic, and I'm going to take my tire master and drag it into the schematic, like so. And then I'm going to also drag in my tire, except I just want the X rotation right here, like this. And then I'm going to wire this up with what's called a revolve node. It's actually kind of an older node in Modo. And there it is. And so what revolve will do is you can plug in the world position of our tire master locator, world position, world rotation. And what it can do is measure the distance. You can see how far it's traveling. And then what it'll do is if you give it a little more information, for instance, our tire, if we select that, and remember our we've got our dimensions there, so our 0.783 is our diameter. For the revolve, we're going to do, it wants radius, so we'll do 0.783 divided by 2. There's our radius, and with the knowledge of how far it's traveling and the radius, it's going to know how many times to rotate it around to get it, one full rotation or one full circumference of the tire is going to go the correct distance because it's measuring the distance. So I just take the angle output into X right there. You can also output like the percentage along the path that it's traveling or the total distance traveled. It's a useful node. If I sort of scoosh this over here like this and then just press play, you can see it's now automatically rotating the right amount right there, that easy. And so we'll just dress this animation up just a little bit. By the way, it's rotating the correct direction here, but you can go to revolve and click negative axis if it's not doing it. If it's doing it backwards for you like this, you can flip it there. So anyway, let's also put a little wobble on it. So I'm gonna go back to my tire and I'm gonna throw in the Z as well. And I'm gonna bring up a node called oscillator, if I can spell it. Oscillator, channel oscillator. This is just a waveform. And so it's just going to kind of go left to right, right? So we're just outputting the amplitude. And I'm going to bump that up to like 5, and that'll translate to 5 degrees and to the Z rotation. So now when I play it, you see it's sort of wobbling back and forth as it goes along the path there. Wobble, wobble, wobble. Looks good. We've got some procedural animation here. But I'm actually going to keyframe that because I don't want it to wobble the entire time. So I'm just going to keyframe the amplitude there at, actually I want that at 300. And then again at 0, I'm just going to press S for a new keyframe. I'm just going to kind of eyeball this, like maybe around 40 something, and around here I'll just press S again. And then I'm going to take these two end ones and put them back at 0. Not all of these, just the two end ones back at value of 0. So now it doesn't wobble at the beginning, then it wobbles. In fact, in the middle, I'll just press S again, and I'll just maybe do this so it's sort of increasingly wobbles and gets super wobbly right around here and then de-wobbles as it ends. Okay, looks good. All right, so now we've got a tire wobbling around on a track. And so now we need this sort of, rut or trail in the mud that the tire is going to leave behind it. So let's go back to our plane here. I'm going to close the schematic now, and I'm going to pop open the mop stack. And we're going to create a weight map. So I'm going to do tab, and it's called set weight. Whoops, we want one more time. We'll do set weight, not set work plane, set weight right there. And we'll give it a name. We'll just call it W. And if I select the map, it's going to select that weight map here. You can see that it has it selected. And it's all at 100%, right? And also make sure that under active meshes, you have show weight maps so you can see this in the advanced viewport or the default viewport. And now we're going to do a fall off on this weight. So under tool pipe, click add, and we're going to do a blend fall off. And then inside the blend fall off, we're going to add a couple of curve fall off. So let's add our first curve fall off. So curve fall off, here it is right here. Now you can see that the weight map went away, and our curve is expected. Curve fall off wants to know which curve we're going to use. So just twirl down, go to add curves, and under existing, this is existing stuff in the scene. We'll pick our curve, and now we've got the weight map back, and it's a little funky looking. That's because, let me just slide these up. I kind of wish these would default to these views and not the smushy views. But guess what? It's never going to change because Modo is not being worked on. Okay, so right now it's going just along length, right? It's 100% at 0, and at the end, this part of the curve is 0%. And so we actually want the length to be 100% all the way, so it's just going to make it all red. But then we're going to go over here to fall off by distance, and we're going to move this one down. And you'll see what happens is, as we move away from the center of the curve by like a ½ meter, it goes to 0. So I'm actually going to make this like 0.3. And I think I'm going to just sort of remap it a little bit so you can see it's getting a little bit chunkier, a little bit, higher values in the middle. Looks good. Okay, that's good. So now what we can do is if I add like a push here, we'll add a push, and then we're going to add a tool pipe. We're going to do a vertex under new. We're going to do a weight map fall off like that. And we'll just pick our weight, which is the one we just made right below it, W. And if I go to push and press C for channel haul, we can take a look at how that works, right? So we don't want this, obviously. We want it, and we don't want this either. We want to have it sort of bulge on the edges and then be down in the middle. So that's where the blend fall off comes in. So I'm going to go over here and I'm going to add another fall off. And we're going to add another curve fall off. And this is curve fall off 2. I'm going to drag it above curve fall off 1. And again, I've got to tell it which curve to use. We're going to use existing, use our curve here. You can see it just sort of added that on top. Right now the blend is set to add. It just sort of added these two together. So what I want to do is go back to my second one. We'll do the same thing. We're going to have it 100% all along the length. So it's going to be like all red now. But then along the, sort of the distance from the center of the curve, we're going to go like this. And we're going to have a radius smaller, like half the size, like 0.15. And here you can see it's adding, but we're going to change our blend fall off to subtract. And aha, now we have, and if I go back to my push and push, you got this sort of like a little bit of a track here. And what's cool is I can actually remap this a little bit more. So it's not just 0 and getting no push in the middle. I can actually have it pushed down a little bit, kind of like it's wet mud. So we'll go back over here to my curve fall off. And here, this is the fall off by distance. And so I can actually, I think you could do either one of these, but let's just do, let's do this one. Let's pop this up, just click the little gear, say open an editor. And I'm going to grab the one that's 100%. I'm going to overdrive that to a little more than 100%, right? Maybe even 200%. And you can see it's getting like a negative weight map in the middle there and then positive on the outside. And so if I go to my push tool again, now you can see it's like pushing down on the blue and up on the red. So pretty cool. And then you can go in here and if you want to remap these a little bit, you can do that like that, or probably like that. So yeah, pretty good, except one problem. We've got this big we've got our nice mud like divot and mound here, but it's just stuck there. It's not following the tire, right? It's pre-existing. We need it to sort of build as the tire goes. So yeah, there's a way to do this in Modo. This is one of the things I discovered. It's much easier in Cinema 4D, but Modo can do this too. We're just going to do a little trick here with the schematic. So I'm going to come over here and I'm going to pop open my schematic again. And I've got our little tire master going around, right? And so what we're going to do is we're going to take each frame position of this locator. So as this locator goes frame by frame, it has a position. And we're going to take all those positions and we're going to put them in an array, and we're going to create a curve out of that array. So I'm going to come over here and I'm going to do in. I'm going to call this curve for push, because we're just going to use this curve for the push. And then I'm going to drag it over here. And then in the stack, let's add a create polygons. We also could have created that in the schematic, I guess. And just double click the little yellow thing there. And now we've got our create polygons. And you can see that it's asking for positions. And so we want the positions from our locator there. So what we need to do is get a locators to array node. So there's lots of array nodes in Modo, and they'll be like, different ways to process arrays, and also different ways to get arrays and get arrays from curves or locators or all kinds of stuff. So we want locators to array right here. And this, we're going to use our tire master locator. So just go purple to purple like that. And we're going to set it from multiple to single. You can see that it's grabbing a new position on each frame. Just make sure we go to 300 frames for our entire animation like that. And then we're going to plug that into positions. And then if I sort of select our curve polygon here and isolate, you can see we've got this goofy looking polygon. In the create polygons node, let's change mode, I'm sorry, not mode, but polygon type from face to curve. And then just make sure curve is set to not closed or none for closed. So there it is, there's your curve, right? And it just builds along. So this curve is similar to our first curve. So if I hide it, it's exactly like it. So if I hide our first curve there, we just look at this curve for push. In fact, I'll make this a slightly different color. So add draw options, draw style wireframe, texture, wireframe color, user, make it green maybe. And there it is. So now we've got this, going along. And so one of the things we need to do is we want to have this curve, animate, sort of build as this is growing. So if you look at the locators to array, there's the end time here, right? So we need to animate that. And what we'll do is we're just going to drag that into the schematic. I really love just being able to drag channels right into the schematic. One of the really nice things about Modo. And then I'm just going to do time. I'm going to grab our little time node. Boom, time. Now, if your icons don't look like mine, you don't have Warren's icon kit, and I suggest you get that. If you continue to use Modo, it's awesome. So we'll go time, and I'm just going to take time, and I'm going to put it into end time like that. And now it's going to read the current time, and it's going to put that into the end time. And you see us just drawing this curve as I go. Because what it's doing is it's saying, okay, I'm going to grab, I'm going to start at frame 0, and then the end time will just change like every frame. It'll just increment, and then each of these positions is then creating a curve, and the curve just builds over time. So what we need to do is go back into our ground here, and we're just going to go to the tool pipe and the blend fall off, and we're going to change the curve, right? So this little arrow button here, this will let me swap out to the new curve for push, and this guy too, curve for push. And so now we've got new curves here, and you can see this. It's building this weight map from this growing curve. And now it's working pretty well, I think, right? Looks good. Now, I think the only thing I did on this, and again, like I said, you can res up your, we can make this like 200 subdivisions if you want to sort of like res up the ground. And it's going to slow down, obviously, as it's creating this stuff dynamically. But you can kind of see what's going on here, right? By the way, if you're on here and you see like you're not getting anything, that's because ghosting is on. You can click ghosting off. You can see the full stack. If ghosting is on, it's only going to show, what you have selected, right? There's the weight map and there's the push, right? That's how ghosting works. I hate ghosting. I think it could be implemented a lot better, but it's never going to change again, so I'm not going to complain. Okay, so yeah, now we've got it, right? We've got a nice wobbly, rotating tire, and we've got this nice push here. the last thing I do, I guess, is I would just come over here. I'm going to select, well, you don't have to select this. I'm going to select this because I'm going to add a new set weight I'm sorry, you don't have to select it. Just add a new set weight right above it. I thought if I selected it, it would add the new mop above the selected one, but I guess I'm wrong. Okay, we're going to make another set weight, and we'll just call this W2. And we're just going to use that same curve as a fall off. So I just want one more curve fall off, like one more right there. And remember, we're going to use the curve for push. And then we're going to, let's select this weight map. And let's change our curve fall off. So again, so it looks like 100% all along the length of the curve and 1 to 0 here. And I'm going to keep this one at 0.5. And basically, I'm just going to use this one for texturing, right? So this weight map, W2, we're going to use for texturing to blend between like a muddy material and like a gravel material. So there's W1 for the push. And here's W2 for the texturing. I think everybody knows how to do that. You know, I can just show you really quick here, I suppose. If you're going to do it, you can do it in Octane. It'll work, or you can do it in Modo. But if I come over here and just do an add, we got to add our material tag here, or you can do an item mask, I suppose. We'll just call this ground, or I don't know, gravel or something, or mud, maybe. I don't know, whatever. And then we'll just add a group over here in the shader tree and point it to that mud mask right there. Let's throw a principled material in there like that. And I don't want to grab that anymore. And then just add like, close this. I'm going to add like a constant like this. And we'll make the constant sort of like, we'll just do some false colors here, like this color. And if I duplicate it and make this one sort of yellow, and then I go to add layer and special, is it special? I think it's special. Vertex map, no? Or is it processing? Processing, vertex map texture, and we want to use W2 like that. But that's actually just, we're just going to use this as our mask there. So we'll drag it on there. It's not giving us, oh, there it is. Yeah, so it is working. So, and so obviously, you know, you wouldn't use, you know, yellow and pink textures. You would use, you know, actual, you know, PBR textures and just blend between them. And Octane will do that as well. But yeah, that's it. There you go. We've got some procedural paths and fall offs and a building curve and some procedural motion on the tire. Cool stuff. Moto's still kicking. All right, take it easy, guys.
Yum, yum.